Okay, thanks, Jason. Maybe let's kick off, Philip, the charge that's been made that the roadmap actually lacked ambition, and there were a couple of scenarios that were quite plausible that you didn't have the political confidence to go for. High renewables, high energy efficiency.
Well, I mean, to be serious about it, I don't think we would claim that the scenarios were. We investigated all scenarios. We did have a problem, and this is why I said it was a technical debate about it first. We had a problem about modelling 95 or 100% renewables, because the Prime's model, which is not necessarily the best model in the world, but is the only one which we could use, and hopefully we're going to be able to get better ways of modelling, gave us the impression that at that level, that those percentages, some of the coefficients and variables, the algorithms in the models, would produce immediately vertical curves of costs, which was not correct. So we thought that it would be better simply to go to 85 and then extrapolate on the basis of the reasoning of 85 rather than going to 95. Now, I accept the criticism that we could do that now. We've got to update the reference scenarios in any case, and we can look at those, and we can look at other combinations. I think going back to 2006 on high energy efficiency and high renewables. Well, we were at 2% renewables then, and now we're talking. Well, 3, all right. Overall.
No, we are doubling. So we are basically, we go from 10 to 20. It's the overall energy sector.
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
Let's
take into account the hydro and the biomass which existed beforehand. In terms of the actual stimulus to a rollout, which is the bet which we've all taken in Europe, and it's been a successful bet. Rolling out new renewable technologies and developing biomass on a sustainable basis. We will come forward with biomass criteria, sustainability criteria. There are certain member states who don't like it, but we will do it. Because biomass can play an important role, in particular in this transformation of thermal power stations to biomass, which will be a very interesting transition phase. And the second thing, self-criticism, I say about the roadmap, it isn't very technologically creative. We don't assume anything about what might happen to technologies. I think, though, that on renewables, it's a bit difficult to generalize and talk immediately about the need for a binding renewables target again.
Why?
Well, can I finish the sentence? Is that all right? Because the whole bet, surely the bet of actually allowing member states to support renewables with subsidy, and this is not just subsidy to capital, but subsidy to operating costs, is, and I'm not denying that I'm fully with Claude on the fact that all sources of energy need to be assessed on this basis, not just renewables. But when the bet was, let's roll them out as on a bigger scale as possible so we can get the costs down so that they reach some kind of new grid parity. And that's great. And, well, frankly, we're on the road to that in onshore wind and in solar voltaic. And we should be proud of that. It's a really great result. But then, well, do we need, if there are renewable technologies which work, to set another binding target? I'm just putting the question out. Another binding target for the whole of the renewables group.
Yes.
Well, okay, there are alternatives. There is something I personally strongly agree with. We need a binding emissions target, don't we, for 2030? We're not talking about 2050, by the way. We are. The point of this roadmap is to concentrate minds on the next 10 to 20 years, what investments are necessary now. And we've published a paper on renewables post-2020, which actually repeats a lot of the things which Jason and Claude have underlined themselves, to give a lot more stimulus to cooperation mechanisms to continue the fight for renewables. But I think it is a bit. We shouldn't jump to the conclusion we immediately need binding targets for all these things, unless we're absolutely not confident that the market could in fact deliver them. If you have strong targets for emissions reduction and you have an ETS system which works, is it absolutely necessary to have another round of binding targets for renewables? That's a question we've put. You've immediately answered it without analysing it. I think we have to analyse it.
Okay, Claude, I think you probably want to come in on that.
No,
are you afraid of the market? Is that on renewables?
Yeah. No, I think so. And Philip, I have sent you the document from IEA, and IEA says, and with a price of 6, so we have such a volatility in EU ETS.
A price at €6 a ton.
Euros per ton. Mm-hmm. So, so will you invest just because of the EU ETS? And in what will you invest? This will be, so the lesson we should learn is that EU ETS is, and I'm defending it. You know that there are radical environmental groups who say all this trading of CO2 is complete nuts and we should get rid of it. And we should impose taxes and so on and so on. So I defend a cap and trade system because it is a horizontal signal to the whole economy. But this is not sufficient to get investment security for those technologies where we know they have the biggest potential to deliver and by far the lowest risk. So is anybody in this room who contests that wind and solar are in a different category of solutions for climate change, energy security than nuclear after Fukushima? So is a nuclear reactor, from a holistic risk approach, do we put it in the same categories than wind and solar? I think it is intellectually not more honest to do it in the same category. So, which means that renewables, because they have a much lower societal risk, have to be promoted. And the best way to promote them is a horizontal target, which also allows us to go around this tricky question of the energy mix, which is in the end is the electricity mix, full stop. So a horizontal renewable target will leave enough space to member states because, and typical discussion on energy. Do you know that electricity is hardly 20% of the primary energy? No, of the final energy? Have you ever assisted to a discussion on energy where it is not electricity mix is not taking 110% of the time? Who speaks about buildings? It's 40% of energy. Who speaks about transport? So I want also to pledge that we speak more about what is our long-term building policy, what is our long-term transport policy. And therefore, we need a horizontal target for renewables, because we need also more renewables in the heating and cooling. And I think we need to think more deeply about what can renewables in the transport sector do, because if oil gets crazy, with what will we fly? With what? And efficiency must also be a standalone horizontal target, because we have to improve buildings and we have to improve transport. And all those people who are against renewables and efficiency have a hidden agenda. The nuclear guys don't want it because, come on, it will already take 10 years, 12 years to build a new reactor. It's already probably too late for nuclear to do any difference, because the day where you will build, when a nuclear reactor will be up and running, the running hours of this nuclear reactor will be limited by wind and solar, and therefore they will never get their money back. So you have to understand the lead time. So nuclear for me is over unless Commission would agree to give support, so subsidies for new nuclear power plants. This is not covered by the treaties, and one day you will also have to give me an answer on what we do with the British EMR. And the gas lobby is, I was 3 years ago, I had a lot of meetings with Eurogas because I tried to bring them into the picture of a high efficiency, high renewable scenario plus gas, that is the winning ticket. But the day where the gas lobby looked at our scenarios, high efficiency, high renewables, they saw that gas in building goes down, gas in power goes up a bit, but because the running hours are short, this will not trigger big volumes, and that was the end of our love affair. So the gas lobby is one of the most dangerous lobbies today in Brussels against a good setting of future 2030 targets. They want to blow up the renewable targets for 2030 and the efficiency targets because they want to sell more gas. And the CCS and gas, let's be serious. If you have a gas power plant who runs 3,000 hours a year, and you have to add a carbon sequestration behind that, are you aware that you add a whole chemical industry process behind the gas? You will never get back. At what cost does this come? 90, 100, 110, 120? So it's nobody. That is stop to make people believe a second that any investor will go for that. You cannot get back your money. So gas CCS is one day we will impose it because of climate policy, but from the economics, it's nowhere.
Okay, can I just maybe bring Ulrich in on as a representative of industry? I mean, what's your view on?
Well, I would like to get back to the renewable policies and renewable targets beyond 2020. Of course, I understand what you're saying, but from a very practical point of view and thinking about what you can base investments on, we can just look back and see that the ETS has unfortunately become something that makes very, very little difference in any decision. And the binding target so far has been the decisive ones. How this ended being like that, I don't really know. I wonder if it was policymakers in 2007 that were not willing to see the CO2 price that would unfold without the renewable targets, or if it was the other way around. In any case, as an investor, we would just be concerned about all those political question marks, and for that the risk and uncertainty that no decisive renewable policy at all after 2020 would just be too risky. But it does require some policy design, some clever policy design, I suppose, to then build targets and policies on renewables that does not undermine the price of the CO2. I think that can be done, and that I think that is the policy space that needs to be looked into.
But Philip, you said you don't care one iota about the Polish position in the council on the energy roadmap. But I mean, if you look across a range of policies, there's a lot of people calling for radical action on ETS, but there will equally be pushback from the energy intensive industries. We have the economic crisis, which is to a large extent influencing national governments' positions on whether to invest in renovating the housing stock and renovating public buildings. I mean, the broader economic context is not favourable for bold action. How do we get out of this? How do we get to a position where we can deliver some kind of policy predictability for the period?
Well, on the issues of buildings and energy efficiency in general, I think we're beginning to win the argument with people that the cost of not doing this is much higher than the cost of investing in energy efficiency. At the private level and at the aggregate level. There are a lot of the interventions which were made in the initial debate among the member states and ourselves place emphasis on the long-term nature of the investments, which it was very difficult to justify. They ignored completely the impact of cost savings overall in terms of fuel bills. They ignored the possibility to develop financial models between the banks, the owners of buildings, the tenants, to make it profitable for all three to be involved in these investments. And they ignored something huge, which is the cost of extra generation capacity. So if you add all those things in, the initial reaction of finance ministers to the idea that energy efficiency investments were costly is just rubbish. It's just rubbish. It's bad economics, bad calculation. I think that what we're getting to in the debate, though, is what is the necessary degree of predictability about the framework for future investments in generation, in low-carbon generation, which will kick things forward again. And I think that Ulrich is right that we need to be a bit more creative than what we're looking at now. What worries me is the idea that investments in this sector are only driven by subsidy. A lot of them still are. But the whole point of the policy which Claude Turmes and others invented was precisely to get the costs down and degressively see the subsidies removed. That's the right framework to be in. Now, I want to say something else, which is a reality check. It's not about economics, it's about politics. I have personal views about nuclear, which I'm not going to reveal at all. And
go on.
No, I won't, because we can't. We're not supposed to. We're not supposed to. But there are 10 member states of the European Union who want to go on with a nuclear program at the moment. We have not, or collectively, the battle to get the minds of the public in places like Lithuania and Czechia to abandon nuclear in favor of more renewables is not won yet. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't be won, but I'm saying that that's a huge reality, and it's certainly a very huge reality in France in terms of their dependence on nuclear now, and it's a huge reality in my own country because other renewables weren't developed, which could have been cost effective. And the dramatic situation is that you have development of offshore wind, which is very high cost at the moment, and then nuclear, which the House of Commons in the UK voted 600-8 to back. Now, I fully agree with Claude that this is why I emphasized earlier, we need a strict framework on what can be supported where. I think that in the area of nuclear, as in particular, because there's no infant technology argument here, there's no infant technology argument for supporting it, that there is a security of supply argument which we have to address. The issue is, what is the alternative for the UK?
In the UK, you have a dash for gas. There is no security of supply problem whatsoever. So for once, I will be with Shell.
You contradict yourself.
No, I'm not in contradiction.
No, you are, because you've got to look at it. What we're talking about, as Ulrich says, is the investment environment, not for the next 10 or 15 years, but investments in really hard capacities, which are going to exist for at least 20, if not 60 years, if they invest in nuclear. So, yes, okay, immediately there's no gas problem. But if they believe that there is to be nuclear capacity in the UK, as there would be in France, I think that we have to have a very rigorous policy of control of any support, whether it's legally described as state aid or not, to make sure that there is a level playing field. I think at the other end of that argument, you've got to admit that not all renewables need the same level of support as they've had in the past.
But under which treaty article will you justify support for non-inf? So in the treaty, so we have two legislation for support. One is the state aid guidelines for environment. You go through them. It's only about efficiency and renewables. Nuclear is not mentioned. And then you have one of the first articles of the existing electricity market, where you can do support for infant technology and for security of supply. And UK doesn't qualify. So, so the first issue is that you will have to change the electricity market directive in order to. So, most of you will not understand what is the game in UK. In the beginning, you had 6 or 8 companies who were in interest to invest in 10 or 12 reactors. Iberdrola stepped out, Scottish Southern stepped out, RWE stepped out, E.ON stepped out, Centrica is on the way out. Why? Because they say, look, after Fukushima, I will not risk on my company, without any guarantees from anybody, to invest 7.5 billion, that's the cost of an EPR. During 10 years, I will not win any kilowatt hour, so no cash back. So during 10 years, 7 billion and more out. And no company and nobody in City of London will invest into that. So the combination of the EU law as it stands and the bloody reality of what a new nuclear power plant costs just means game over. So what you are suggesting is that we will twist the rules of the existing rules of the EU internal market to allow for nuclear. And in the same moment you say, but we will twist the rules to allow for a new nuclear, and we will get rid of subsidies, so-called subsidies for wind and solar.
So Claude, you have to withdraw the word twist the rules. The Commission hasn't taken any view in public on it. It's expressed its reserves in private on what's going on. Just withdraw that word, because we don't twist any rules. You're talking about secondary legislation here.
Yes.
There is nothing in any treaty which, at the moment, stops a member state providing it does it in proportionately, transitionally, and where it's really necessary to intervene in a market. That's what the state aid rules are. The state in the treaty, you're talking about amending the existing guidelines, which, by the way, have to be amended even to take into account the new framework for renewables.
So that will be the vehicle to open it for nuclear?
No, yeah, so you're inventing a conspiracy theory which you don't need to.
I want to understand how the British will get the waiver from Commission to do subsidies for new nuclear power plants. Because everybody tells me that this. So, or you change some existing secondary law, or it will just not fly.
Listen, there's a problem with the UK. and its security of supply for the future. The UK government has to sort it out. The Commission has to examine what its price proposals are. And I'm not going to say anything which Mr. Almunia and the others will regret me saying before they've actually taken a decision on it. But they'll listen to you as well, Claude.
Good. So you feel it's a hot
Quick
topic.
final comment. Yeah, okay. I think we've made that clear.